All right, let's now bring in Professor Godfrey Maringira, who's the Associate Professor of Anthropology at the Plaatje University in Kimberley in the Northern Cape. Professor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time. So this ongoing unrest in the DRC needs a multi-thronged approach. Firstly, that peaceful dialogue is going to be the best solution, and that all leaders involved in this crisis need to be at the forefront of these without external influence. So where do they start? I mean, the recent talks and resolutions by the AU and SADC leaders resulted in a broken ceasefire, meaning regional bodies do not necessarily have that authority when it comes to such matters.
First of all, thank you for having me in the studio. And the Congo issue is it's a complex issue. Mm-hmm. It is a complex issue in the sense that not only those actors who are involved in the war needs to come to the table to have a clear negotiation about the best way forward. So if I may bring a very brief background to the Congo War, you realize that in 1998, Zimbabwe deployed its troops.
Yes, go ahead, Professor.
And we know what happened finally when they withdrew.
Go ahead, Professor.
Yes, finally, when they withdrew in the Congo in 2002. So it is very complex in the sense that we need actors to negotiate in good faith to ensure that lives are not lost in Congo, because the Congo war is strategic as well. It is strategic in the sense that where soldiers basically deploys in Congo is not a friendly terrain. The terrain itself, without even shooting a gun, can destroy. So it is very important to analyze this complex situation, given the scenarios to the background of the Congo war. South Africa is not the first country to be deployed in Congo. There has been other countries who have been deployed in Congo: Namibia, Angola, Zimbabwe, partly Chad at some point in time, Burundi, Uganda, and so these countries also need to share their experiences when it comes to the Congo war itself. What do we need to learn apart from diplomatic relations, apart from diplomatic negotiations? We need to bring the military to the table to have a clear negotiation about the Congo war, because the Congo war, it is not what we see on the screen. The Congo war is not what we see on everyday life through the media. The Congo war has to be told from the experience of being in that particular war. Let us bring the narratives, let us bring the stories of those who are at the war front. What does it mean to be at the war front? What does it mean to fight in a war in which one does not really understand what they are fighting for? So it is very important to have all these stories of war. The stories of war, if they are shared, they can bring intervention mechanisms, intervention tools to the broader political dialogue. But also importantly, remember, it is the soldiers who fight in war, and war is organized by politicians, and soldiers need to fight in that particular war. So where are the soldiers in all these complex dialogues? So my suggestion is that we need the stories of war, we need the complex dialogue to be negotiated, in particular to bring peace to the Congo. So my condolences goes to the South African soldiers who lost their lives in this complex war, and I hope there can be finality to the negotiations around the soldiers. So we should not depict these soldiers who lost their lives in war as victims. These are heroes of the war. Many lives could have been lost, but it really shows that South Africans is up to it, but negotiations have to take place. So I salute the South African soldiers for bearing forth despite all the criticisms, because the Congo war is a difficult war.
You know, Professor, I'm losing you a little bit in terms of signal, but we're going to try and forge ahead with this very important interview. You spoke about the complexities there and people having to negotiate in good faith. Now, we need to note that, of course, at the heads of summit, the DRC president has been very absent from these talks. Even yesterday's AU summit, he was not present, and we are made to believe it is because of the current situation of the escalation of the hostilities on the ground in the DRC. But he was speaking during the week, urging other nations as well as member states to actually blacklist Rwanda. So in your journal, I mean, you also go into great lengths, right, in establishing and also dismantling the different narratives that most people have been exposed to, as you alluded to earlier, starting right at the origins of this war, when even Zimbabwean soldiers, as you said, were part of this mission. Maybe briefly take us through some of those biggest misconceptions right now about what this current conflict is about. I mean, that you have actually highlighted in your journal pertaining to the deployment of these missions.
Yes, absolutely. So there are untold stories around this war, in particular, around those who fight in this war. So what are the issues that we need really to engage with? We need to understand even the Congolese army itself, that the Congolese army may even at some point leave deployment areas, and they can leave intervention forces to fight for themselves and to fight for their lives. Mm-hmm. Remember, if South Africa is going to the Congo war, they are going to help to restore peace. They are going to help to restore democracy. But what are the issues that we really need to know about the friendly forces which they are helping to fight this Congo war? So people need to articulate this very well about the complexities. So when I refer to the complexities, I'm referring even to the friendly forces, the Congolese army. What kind of an army are we trying to help in Congo as South Africa, but also in particular as SADC? So if the president of Congo really is trying to negotiate in good faith, so when I say in good faith, I'm not only specifically referring to other SADC members, but in particular to the president of Congo. Also, one has to realize that the President Cyril Ramaphosa has been trying by all means to ensure that there is peace in Congo. But due to the complexities on the ground in Congo, in the deployments, it makes peace very difficult, even despite the amount of training that the South African soldiers might have. South Africa needs this good faith negotiations in Congo, bring all the stakeholders on the table, bring even the military generals on the table with the stories of those who are at the front of the war. They will tell you what it is to be in the Congo war.
Mm-hmm. And you've also highlighted this in your journal, Professor, where you've actually, where you also ventured into this space actually without prior knowledge, and then you also became a soldier. So you know how it is to actually be at the forefront and what the experience of those that are at the forefront actually is. Now, in understanding all these dynamics, Professor, do you know, during the opening of the AU summit yesterday, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, pointed out that European countries need to stop arming rival groups or armies in the continent, as these would never bring about peace. I mean, we spoke earlier about how internal influence actually casts a dark shadow on the actual objectives of such missions. Can troop deploying nations opt for alternative assistance besides boots on the ground?
So this is a very difficult scenario. When one talks about intervention, mm-hmm. we are talking about a multiple intervention system, mm-hmm. Which brings in other countries beyond Africa about the Congo war. So this is what exactly we need to think through this Congo war. Congo war is very political, like many of the other wars, but its complexities surrounds the ways in which people or soldiers are deployed in that particular war. What does it mean to have arms in Congo? What does it mean to have artillery in Congo? all sorts of artilleries in Congo might not be of help. There are no winners in Congo, despite any military intervention from outside the world. So it is very important and very critical to begin to understand that Congo is not about the mighty weapons. Congo is not about the mighty soldiers. Congo is not about the mighty intervention. One has to understand the Congolese terrain itself. It is a terrain not just of war. It is a terrain of important and critical debates about the situation in Congo. So one would therefore want to understand that the Congolese civilians can become soldiers at any given time and moment. So people you perceive to be civilians can become soldiers. People you perceive to be soldiers can become civilians at any given time. So these are the complexities, despite any mighty intervention in Congo.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. We really appreciate your input this afternoon. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I would have loved to take this whole hour and just talk about this matter around the conflict in the DRC. That is Professor Godfrey Maringira, the anthropology professor at the Plaatje University.